Well, it's a very great pleasure to be here in the sort of Hampstead area of London, talking to Penelope Thwaites, and the main subject of our conversation is this CD, which you can see behind us on the piano. Well, first of all, Penny, let's talk about your interest in Vaughan Williams. And what intrigues me is that you were born in the UK, in Chester, but you grew up in Australia, and I'm wondering how far you had access to Vaughan Williams's music then as you were growing up.
Well, I spent my school and university days in Melbourne. My parents were here through the Second World War. My dad was at Oxford and he finished his degree after the Second World War. Then by that time he had 2 children and we all returned to Australia. So that's how that happened. And Dad was a poet. He won the King's Medal for Poetry, first Australian to do so. So there was a lot of literature in our household. And his father was a Yorkshireman. Not sort of posh family at all, but he went to Australia as a schoolmaster, was passionate about English literature. So I think these things were part of our childhood.
But you're saying there wasn't music naturally in the household at that point?
There was music, a lot of music, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I mean, there was a piano, my mother played the piano. I don't remember not playing the piano. I mean, I think I was, certainly by the age of 5. And when I was 6, my youngest brother was born. I was induced to play the Wagner Wedding March, to words specially written for this infant. But to get back to VW, unsurprisingly, at school, I went to Church of England, Tintern Church of England Girls' Grammar School, we had a redoubtable English headmistress, and like a lot of those schools in Australia, they were based very much on the English model. And I do remember, of course, singing Lyndon Lee and thinking what an absolutely beautiful song it was. I mean, from the age of 8, I was not a good sight reader, but I could play anything by heart, so I always played the hymns at school. And so I must have played also 1 or 2 of the Vaughan Williams hymn tunes, which are magnificent, of course. Then, next picture I remember at home, this was in Melbourne, somebody gave me a recording of the English folk song suite. I absolutely loved it.
Yeah.
And then the other thing, probably once I returned to England, I remember somebody had a recording of Songs of Travel, and it was a John Shirley Quirk recording, which is a beautiful one.
Made under very difficult circumstances. What sounds like a box room, doesn't it? I mean, the piano it sounds terribly constrained, but he is just wonderful.
He's wonderful, and Viola Tarnard is wonderful too. I met her in Aldeburgh because she worked with another singer that I had worked with, Muriel Smith. But it was the songs and the words that absolutely got me. And this is where I'm sure that genetics must come into us, because I like all of us, I've got sort of a range of ancestors, from those who thought they were rather posh to people who were tillers of the soil. And my great-grandfather, great-great-grandfather, George Thwaites, is buried in northeast Yorkshire. And I think these people just had the feeling in folk music is that this is music that comes out of real life. It's not somebody sort of dressing up and being terribly. It's just real life in music, but the power and beauty of the tunes, and I suppose the modal quality, is just always appealed to me.
Yeah, right. Well, let's look at the concept behind this new album, which, as we're speaking, is due out in just 2 or 3 weeks. What is the concept behind it? It's sort of Vaughan Williams and Friends in a way, isn't it?
Some years ago, having done so much work with the music of Percy Grainger, and knowing that they had a friendship, they knew each other in London in the early days of in the early years of the 1900s. I was fascinated to think of the difference in the part that folk music played in their lives, and to try and encapsulate it as briefly as I can. This is, and I'm not an expert on Vaughan Williams, but he's certainly one of my heroes. But looking at the family there, the churchmen, lawyers, the Darwins and all these people, it was in a marvellous cultural background. And something obviously in Ralph Vaughan Williams reacted powerfully to that, I think, element of modalism in folk music. It's there throughout his music, whatever he was writing.
But he's a very different character to Percy Grainger in a way. He's a sort of establishment figure, whereas Percy Grainger is off the wall, and his music is off the wall, as we hear in this album.
Andrew, you said it. I mean, that is it. And so, but Percy had been 5 years in Frankfurt, and they call themselves the Frankfurt Gang, so it's Balfour Gardner, Roger Quilter, Norman O'Neill, and these people were real friends. And so when he came to London and launched his career as a concert pianist, as a pretty dazzling concert pianist in 1901, he went to a talk by Lucy Broadwood and was captivated with the idea of collecting folk tunes, because they'd loved the music of Grieg, and his father his parents, his father came from England directly. His mother was second generation Australian, but they all had this kind of thing in them. The point about Percy is that he had the personal touch when getting the tunes from these folk singers of deepest respect and empathy. I think Vaughan Williams was a hugely humane man, marvellous person, and I'm very impressed that he got out in fields in the wartime, and dug and all that sort of thing. There was nothing sort of pompous about him, but you can't escape the fact that he was not one of the tillers of the soil himself. Percy didn't know, because his father, who was a very brilliant architect actually, told lots of fibs about his family background when he went to Australia. Lots of people did that. You go to Australia, you build a different identity.
Exactly.
Okay. So in editing the new Percy Grainger Companion, I included a chapter on the family background, because I always think, we are the product of our background, whether we like it or not. We don't know who in our background, of course. And I found wonderful help from Rita Boswell, who was doing the archives at Westminster School. My son went there for the last 2 years, but I said to Rita, apparently John Granger went to this. Oh no, she said, no sign of him. I said, really? Well, I do the archives at Harrow, and lots of people pretend they've gone to these schools, but they haven't. But she said, I'm really interested in Percy Grainger. So I said,
so there you go.
Are you?
Yeah. But look, he features strongly in this album. We've got, 8 or 9? 9 folk song arrangements, which the two soloists share, and then indeed they duet at one stage with some wonderful interplay between them there. But if we then go back to the start of the album, and we have the first complete recording of Songs of Travel with a female voice, Catherine Rudge. So some people would say, well, really, should a female voice sing? You must have argued in favour of this. What is your argument as to why a female voice should do it? You may just say, well, why not?
Yes, I think I have to give the credit to John Francis as being the one that, and others who decided it would be interesting to have this because it had never been done before. So
That's John Francis of the Vaughan Williams Society.
Exactly. And I think that, and then they asked Catherine Rudge, if she would like to do this. And she took it on. And we hadn't worked before. She's a delightful person, and in this very room we had, well, I would like to have been working with her for a year, you know, I mean, but anyway, the way these things are done, because people are busy, you really get on with it. And I was so impressed with the richness and the drama in her voice. And I think that is her great gift. And she brings that through in so many of the songs throughout the whole disc. I think that is a sort of, that is really a great point there. And I loved the way she responded also. We were able to work together because Songs of Travel is an exquisite work for the piano and the singer. And the words are so wonderful. And so, you know, getting the mood and the twists and turns there was a joy. It was lovely to work.
And you never thought to yourself, this sounds at all strange, after all those male voices singing the Songs of Travel that you've heard over the years?
Somebody said, oh, why don't you do That's the Life for a Girl Like Me? No, thank you. We're not trying to project a kind of 21st century feminism onto this. We are presenting an artist. I mean, we're allowed to read books by men. We're allowed to, of course, now in the theatre, everybody's swapping roles, as they did in Shakespeare's day anyway. No, I think as I love the whole thing, music and words, then why shouldn't a woman show that love in the way she sings this cycle? That to me makes sense.
It's for people to make up their own minds, of course, but
Yeah.
I was absolutely captivated. It's a wonderful, as you say, a wonderful, wonderful quality of voice. We have 3 piano reductions of Vaughan Williams operatic songs, arias if you like, but then two songs by Peggy Glanville-Hicks, and you're going to have to inform people a little bit about her.
Yes.
You know plenty about her, a fascinating character, cosmopolitan sort of character, who did indeed herself have a very real connection to Vaughan Williams.
She did. She actually began her life in Melbourne, and she was a brilliant musician, and she she studied with a man called Fritz Hart, who'd come out from the Royal College of Music and was very, very, very brilliant composer. And through him, she then got I knew she got a scholarship, but she and her mother travelled to England and she got a place at the Royal College of Music. And through Fritz Hart, I think, was in touch with Vaughan Williams. So she studied with Vaughan Williams and others. And she actually did copying work for him and so on. So,
and you look at Ursula Vaughan Williams's biography of her husband, and it's clear there was a friendship there.
There was.
Over a period of time.
There was. I met Peggy because the ABC asked me to premiere her Etruscan piano concerto back in 1980. And so then she was living in Sydney at the end of her life, really, and not composing very much, but we talked quite a bit. And so I got this picture of this incredibly feisty woman. Her life had been difficult, but interesting. I mean, she spent time in India, as had I. She was interested in Indian music. She collected it. She ended up in New York, living in New York, presenting quite cutting-edge composers and so on, and writing herself. I think really because we're not doing a program about Peggy Glanville-Hicks, I would simply refer anybody to go onto Google and they'll find lots of things about her.
Yeah.
This book is a very good one, which I reviewed for the Vaughan Williams Journal, The Music of Peggy Glanville-Hicks by Victoria Rogers.
And it's quite fact. I mean, there's a lot about her music that people will discover in that.
And I think song and dance, particular, she wrote several operas and she wrote a lot of songs and ballets. But this is a first to have an aria from her opera Sappho, which was a late work of Peggy's. And actually, she'd had a great success. She was living in Greece. she was commissioned to write an opera on the story of Nausicaa, and it was a huge success in one of those open-air Greek theatres and so on. And then the San Francisco Opera Company said to her, well, we'd like to commission you to write an opera on Sappho. And she wrote the whole opera, and then they turned it down, which is just, in a nutshell, a major tragedy in anybody's life. She worked on it with Robert Graves, I think, for the libretto. So it lay dormant until quite recently an Australian conductor decided to put it all together and to record it. And I think that therefore it's on record. Jakarta Classics have issued it, but it's never been produced. Now, I encountered we used some of it on this radio program that I did last year about Peggy with the ABC and Mary Nicholson, and I thought the last aria there of Sappho is absolutely wonderful. It's when she realises that she has to leave her children and she's got no future at all. So that is the nature of it. And of course, something as dramatic as like that is very well suited to Catherine.
Yeah. We have that on this album, but immediately before it is a setting of Come Sleep. And of course, people will have in their heads Peter Warlock's setting and Ivor Gurney's setting, and they say, well, not another setting. I think it's captivating,
yes,
is it not? It's a wonderful setting.
It is very, very lovely. And I first came across it when I was running here in London something called the Performing Australian Music Competition, and we had 80 Australian composers represented with 20 nationalities, and that was one of the ones that appeared, and I just thought it was a gorgeous song. So those were the two, but also Marshall McGuire, who's a harpist in Australia, had made a piano reduction of this aria accompaniment, because obviously it would have been an orchestral accompaniment. So this is the first recording of his piano version of the aria.
Absolutely wonderful. We should just make very swiftly a mention of the other composer represented on the album, Penny, John Raynor. I mean, an extraordinary number of songs, nearly 600 songs, but who knows John Raynor? An organist, book reviewer, and all the rest. But I was intrigued to discover that Vaughan Williams had supported him in the 1940s and tried to give him, a boost to his performances of his music. Yes. So 2 songs we have here.
Yes, and I think Alessandra Fischer is one of the most lovely performances there of Down by the River. It's just quintessentially English. John Raynor, as far as I know, never travelled to any other country. I mean, it's got that sort of completely... I said the word local, which sounds awful, but I mean, it's somebody who is just kind of completely there in this very, very English environment. I just think it's a lovely song, and then Alessandro does this one about spring, where he ends on a horrendously high note and manages it superbly.
Spring, the sweet spring, is the year's pleasant king. Then blooms each thing, then mates dance in a ring. Cold doth not sting, the pretty birds do sing. Cuckoo, jug, jug, poet, do it a woo. The palmant may make country houses gay, lambs frisk and play, the shepherds pipe all day, and we but tune this merry lay. Cuckoo, jug, jug, oh, we do it a woo. The fields breathe sweet, the daisies kiss our feet, young lovers meet, old wives a sunning sit. In every street these tunes our ears do greet. Cuckoo, jug, jug,
wonderful song by John Raynor. Let's talk a bit more about Percy Grainger, though, Penny. And I'm wondering, from all the possibilities that you could have chosen from, you've selected these 9 examples. What determined your choices here?
Well, I threw a lot of challenges at the singers, that's for starters. I mean, bold William Taylor, which tells this very colourful story, demands non-stop from the singer a complete sort of variety of voices and moods and so on, and underpinned by some very amusing things in the piano, which I haven't got time to...
Quintessential Percy Grainger,
little asides,
off the wall.
Little aside, which, you know, I mean, one has to be clear about this point. If you're doing Grainger songs, and indeed most songs, you are not accompanying, you are a partner. And the two of you are, you know, together creating that. So there are some comparatively straightforward folk songs, such as the Weaving Song and Fair Young Mary, the Scottish one. There's Dedication, though, which is a very short but incredibly intense song with words by Kipling, Mother of Mine. But of course everybody knows that Grainger had a very, very powerful relationship with his mother. And it is so intense, and it's Grainger-esque in the sense that it's amazingly concentrated. And I have to say, I have a thing about any music that goes on after it's said what it's got to say, it keeps going on and on. You know, you can't accuse Grainger of that. It's rather the reverse that happens. I also love to include, with Alessandro, a Reaver's neck verse, because it's an absolute scoundrel singing for his life on the scaffold, and sort of swaggering, and then you find out in this tightly packed word that the girlfriend has shocked him, you know, so he's got it in for her as well. But the intensity of it and the swaggering of it, absolutely marvellous. We've then got a couple of quite weird Danish duets, Hubby and Wifey, and
I love that.
And Under a Bridge. And although Grainger's wife, Ella, she was Swedish, not Danish, Percy loved Denmark and its music. And I think they're about somebody who's sort of pretending that they're not interested in getting married, but they really are. And then once they are married, they're having an absolute row.
And there's a fantastic interaction between the two singers on
that's
this
right.
recording. They just play it up, no end.
They had fun doing that.
Yeah.
And then to end with something which has now been rechristened Upcountry Song. It's what Grainger wrote and christened Colonial Song. Fortunately now, you know, people sort of think, oh, colonial. The point is, he was a proud colonial in 1901 or whatever it was. A love song for his country, and it is a vocalese really, but it's there are many versions of it. I mean, orchestral and so on, but there's a solo piano, and then this one with the solo piano and 2 voices vocalising.
And they can improvise their vocalisation.
Well, they don't know. It's very, very carefully written there. They don't improvise, but they are...
In terms of their vowel colour.
Well, yeah, yes, we had to decide. I think that the voices, Grainger felt that there was a sort of an Italianesque quality, something to do with the climate anyway. Sometimes he got a bit carried away with these things, but what I find so interesting is, what I did find so interesting was when I toured through various European countries with a programme called Australian Composers and the European Tradition. So I had Bach and I had Chopin and so on, but I also had Margaret Sutherland, Malcolm Williamson, Percy Grainger, etc. I played in Warsaw at the Ostrogski Castle, which is the centre for the Warsaw Chopin Society. And at the end of the recital, a Polish man in the audience, he came up to me, and I had played this piece as Colonial Song, and he said, Colonial Song, he said, that's Grainger, what he felt about his country, but he said it expresses what I feel about my country. And that sort of wide-ranging humanity that was part of Percy Grainger's makeup and his whole approach.
But here's the question, Ben. Do we yet take him seriously enough?
No.
We so easily think of him as wacky and just so eccentric that we can't take him seriously. But there's some amazing stuff that's like nothing else in music.
Well, he sometimes didn't help himself by various choices that he made and things he said. So a lot of Australians felt embarrassed about him, and most of the Brits were incredibly patronising. I mean, it had to go to America in a way to get fully appreciated. But yet, having said that, the Grainger revival, which has taken place since, before 1982, which was his centenary, but people here did amazing work in actually getting the scores. And in this room, we sat, John Lavender and I did a lot of we did all the two piano stuff. Scores were found and edited and redone right here.
Well, no one has done more than you to further his cause.
A lot of people have, but I didn't like. Once I got enthused, it was actually Benjamin Britten's recording, Salute to Percy Grainger, that absolutely thrilled me. And it was an English friend, not the Aussies, it was an English friend who said, "You're an Australian, why didn't you play some Grainger?"
There we go. Well, look, Penny, that's been an absolutely magical time hearing you talk about this music. This album has the best possible virtue of leaving you wanting to hear more, but particularly by Peggy Glanville-Hicks and John Raynor, as people we don't know much about, but of course by Percy Grainger as well. Thank you very much indeed for your time, and I'm sure this will be a great success.
Thank you, it has been a great pleasure.
Hubby and wifey sat down to talk, started to tease each other. Hubby said, "I don't believe you were a maid when we first met together."
And whether maid or no, I was the one you chose, every whit as good as you, and that's how it goes. Hey-ho for you and hey-ho for me, and that's a day to long remember.
Then hubby took his nightcap in his hand, wifey on the ear he flicked her. When wifey gets rumbustious in her talk, hubby must needs restrict her. "Stop all that kidding, girl, do my bidding, that's why I'm called the master of the house. Hey-ho for you and hey-ho for me, and that's a day to remember."
Then wifey took her distaff in her hand, hubby on the pole she stings him. When hubby hatches notions that are daft, back to reason wifey brings him. "Stop all the kidding, go on, do my bidding, that's why I'm called the mistress of the house. Hey-ho for you and hey-ho for me, and that's a day to remember."